There came a turning, there was a moment when all was known. You could feel beauty rising.
Hi, I'm Sue Skasky with Vermont Volunteer Services for Animals Humane Society.
And I'm Lauren Skasky, also with VVSA Humane Society, and welcome to our show, For the Animals.
Today we have Dr. Lynn Murrell from Kedron Valley Veterinary Clinic in Woodstock. And I've had the pleasure and good fortune to know and work with Dr. Murrell for over 25 years now. He was the first veterinarian that agreed to extend reduced rates for spay-neuter and families unable to afford the cost of this really important surgery that eventually resulted in VVSA's statewide spay-neuter assistance program. And this program eventually evolved into VSNP, the Vermont Spay-Neuter Incentive Program that's administered by our Humane Society. His most recent work with his semi-retirement, yeah, and it seems to me that you just haven't slowed down. You just diversified over the years.
Right, exactly.
But thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your latest work, and it's called Conservation Through Public Health, or CTPH, yes?
That's right. And as we go on, you'll understand what that means and what the connection is.
What is their mission statement?
Well, basically, CTPH was founded to protect the mountain gorillas in Uganda, and all these gorillas are located in the windy impenetrable forest and constitute about half of the world's remaining mountain gorillas. There are only about 750 of these left in the world, and about half of them are in this forest. So they're critically endangered, and the purpose of the organization is to try to protect their health.
What does UNESCO stand for?
Well, the forest is a UNESCO heritage site, and UNESCO is United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So it's a very broad reach, but it covers areas of the world that are unique in those aspects, and that basically can't be replaced, and encourages, of course, all of us to preserve those areas.
Okay.
So World Heritage Site of UNESCO is what that is.
So what makes the mountain gorillas windy? Am I saying that right?
Windy, right.
Windy.
Right.
In the impenetrable forest unique?
Well, there's several things that make them unique. As I said, there are only about 750 of them left, and one of the interesting things, and they're only about the second or third animal down the list of being closest related to us, to we humans, and they share 98.4% of our genetic makeup. So you can see they're almost identical. But if you look at us, you know that we look a lot different.
Yeah.
That's the other 1.6%. But they're very gentle animals. They travel in groups, and some of these groups can get up to around 25 individuals. They are led by a silverback who's the senior male, and he actually develops a silver patch across his back when he becomes a senior male. It's part of how that works, so he's recognized. And then there are junior males aspiring to his position someday probably, and then the mothers, and then the kids.
Wow.
So these groups are stick together, like in a lot of herds, and other types of animals. These animals require a very large territory because they're vegetarians. They eat leaves and so forth off of trees, so they have to move each day to a new site. And because of that, it takes a large area to accommodate. But these groups are sort of independent. I think they say they come together occasionally just by randomness, but they tend to avoid each other. I think rarely, perhaps a silverback might try to steal a female from another group or something if he thought he was dominant, over the other male. But that's some of the main things. And the interesting thing is that if you go in to see these animals, they have been habituated, which means that they've been taught to tolerate humans. So they're sort of oblivious to the presence of humans in their midst, and that's why you can go in on a track and watch these animals very close in their completely natural environment, completely, just ignoring you. It's like you're not even there.
I can't wait to see the video that you brought.
Right.
Maybe we could share some of that right here.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so they're vegetarians and they have a healthy makeup?
Yes.
Okay, how big are they?
The silverback is several hundred pounds. A female might be a couple hundred pounds, and the kids are very small. And we've got some videos later of some of the kids playing, and it's just fascinating.
Wow.
You know, we felt we wished we had our grandchildren with us. We could have just tossed them in because they'd have all played together.
Throw them in the mix.
Right, exactly.
That's cute.
Part of the problem with this genetic makeup is, though, however, it makes them very vulnerable to our diseases, and so that's a problem.
What do you mean by several of the groups have been habituated to humans through a 2-year program?
Well, it's kind of interesting because when they first started thinking of ways to preserve these animals, they were thinking, you know, we've got to somehow have income. And one way to have income is to bring people in to see these animals. Because, you know, if you ever go, you know, you just become a believer in preserving these animals and helping them to survive. So what they began to do is rangers began to go in and approach these groups from a safe distance and just sort of hang out for a few hours, and then they'd come back the next day and do the same thing. And over a period of about 2 years, the animals, like I said, became oblivious to humans. You know, it's like, hey, yeah, look, the guys came, you know, whatever, you know, we got to put up with them for an hour, you know, but they ignore you. The kids sometimes, the little ones sometimes showed interest, you know, they kind of like, who are you guys, you know,
Right.
because they're just naturally curious, you know. But the adults, they never even looked your way, you know, basically.
Who founded the CTPH?
Well, Dr. Gladys Kalima Zikosa is the founder, and she is a Ugandan. She's a veterinarian. She got her training actually at the Royal Veterinary College in London, you know, which is an excellent veterinary college. She has a master's degree from the United States as well. But she, when she got out of veterinary school, became the wildlife veterinarian for the country of Uganda, for the Ugandan Wildlife Authority.
She's the one veterinarian for the whole?
Yeah, for the whole thing. So she did a lot of things. She told us a story one time of some elephants that got out of the Queen Elizabeth National Park, and they were being a nuisance. They were getting in people's gardens, and they were causing all kinds of trouble. So they said, okay, Dr. Gladys, you've got to get these elephants and get them back into the park. And it was a long ways away. So she got a helicopter from South Africa. She got some dart guns. They did a whole bunch of other things, and so they followed these 2 female elephants and darted them from the helicopter, and they went down and landed, and then the trucks all came in, and they took these sedated elephants and loaded them into trucks, trucked them back to Queen Elizabeth Park, and released them. You know, things like that. And later on, we'll talk about their website. There's a picture in there of her loading this giraffe onto a trailer, and the giraffe was not sedated, and the giraffe did not want to be loaded in the trailer, and it's very exciting.
That had to make for a funny story. We've got a picture of Dr. Gladys.
Yes, right. And that's with her son, her youngest son, and I thought it was appropriate just to show that she's just like the rest of us. We're proud of our kids. Basically, one of her earlier assignments was to look at an outbreak of disease in the gorillas, and that was what kind of got her started. What had happened is they had gotten scabies, which is a mange. It's like sarcoptic mange, or in people, I guess they call it scabies. And these animals were getting sick. They were getting lesions in their skin and so forth. So they went in and sedated a couple of them with dart guns and got some scrapings, sent them out, and had it diagnosed. And then actually went back and treated them. Basically, they had to treat them kind of remotely because some of these weren't habituated. So they actually darted them with ivermectin, which is a parasiticide.
Isn't that what we use for our cats and dogs?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, in dogs, we often use ivermectin to treat scabies in dogs, or sarcoptic mange in dogs. So anyway, one of the baby gorillas died, however, before it could be treated, which was very sad. And there are pictures on the website of that little guy. I mean, his whole coat was gone, and he was just a big mass of scales and so forth.
Is scabies something that is a prolonged process too?
It would take probably months for an animal to succumb to it. But most of the adults, have better immunity, so they don't. The parasite has a harder time achieving, its goals. But they did have lesions in their skins and so forth. So obviously, a lot of them were becoming infected, and they were able, but by treating just one dose, usually does it, and got rid of them and saved them. And that's when she really became inspired to work with these gorillas, and so eventually left her job with the Uganda Wildlife Authority and founded her organization.
Wow. That's awesome. What is the philosophy of CTPH?
Well, we talked about, I mentioned earlier that, that you'd understand this when I started explaining it. And basically, they began to realize that if you're going to protect the health of these gorillas that are almost identical to us genetically, you're going to have to protect the health of the humans who live around the forest. And so CTPH was set up to not only work on the health of the gorillas, but the health of the people around it. So it's a public health organization as well as animal health. And since they can catch TB, they can catch scabies, they share intestinal parasites and all that, it became a problem when the gorillas would wander out of the park, out of the forest, out of the national park, and get into the human habitat. And they might go scrounging through gardens, you know, they might go playing with clothes hanging on the clothesline, you know, whatever. And undoubtedly that's how the scabies started.
Yeah.
You know, they were hanging around somebody's, you know, backyard, and they got into these clothing, and the clothing had scabies mites, you know, because of some human had it. And so that's how they got it. So that's how they, you know, that's how they approach this, is let's make the people healthy, and then the gorillas will remain healthy. And it works the other way around too. They're trying to keep the gorillas healthy, because if the gorilla does go out and he defecates in your garden and the kids go running through it, they could get a parasite that the gorillas might have. So they try to monitor their health as well.
Do the do the gorillas live that closely with the humans?
Yeah, in fact, I think there's a picture later on that shows from a distance the edge of the national park, and it's remarkable. It's going up the side of a hill, and you see forest here and you see a farm field here. And little huts and things.
No kidding.
So it's, you know, when that line is drawn, the rest of this is farmland.
Okay, so
and so it's a very abrupt interface, and there's no big fence. So the gorillas are curious. They kind of wander in. If they, on that day, they happen to wander to the edge, they say, that's cool out there. I'll investigate that. And
Boy,
so they.
it's just like looking at our front field and seeing the deer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's nothing artificial to keep them anywhere. You know. Yeah.
So. You were talking about how many in the house, how many households?
Yeah, there's about 2,700 households that they deal with that are in their area of concern. And so they have worked with every one of these households in a lot of different ways. They work on sanitation, using pit latrines, for instance, so that the human waste is covered up and the gorillas can't get into it. Birth control, family planning, you might call it. Is a part of their concern. All of these things are, you know, things that they do. They monitor for TB. They have volunteers, and there's a picture of them later. But these volunteers in the communities, if they say, you know, old Joe's been coughing a lot lately, they'll report that, and they'll get him into the human hospital nearby, and they'll test him. If he's got TB, they get him on a treatment regime and so forth. But you can imagine if a gorilla got TB, you can't bring him in every day for treatment. You know, so it could be very devastating. So they really try to keep TB under control, because it is endemic in the country, and if you let a case get out of hand and a gorilla gets in the vicinity of that individual, you know, infection could occur.
Yeah. So how do you tell one gorilla from another?
Well, it's kind of interesting, because, you know, I had the same feeling. You know, these gorillas all look alike to me, but when you're with the people who know them, you know, the rangers, like when we went in and saw them ourselves, they know them just like individuals. That's Mary, and everyone has a name, and that's Susie, who is Mary's kid, you know, her last kid, you know, and he's exactly 1 year and 3 months old. I mean, it's just like, you know, they're friends.
Wow.
They know these animals just like, you know, they would human friends, and know them very personally. Yeah. And they can quote you the, you know, who's born of whom and what year, and then that's his older brother, who's now 5 years old, and it's really cool.
And it's only the silverback that has any.
Yeah, to us that would be the main distinguishing thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but the others vary in size. The mothers are you know, fairly big, but if you saw just a random glance, you might not pick up on it. If she's nursing, it's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
We were talking before the show. What's the concept of One Health?
Well, that's a thing which we began to hear about here in Vermont just a few years ago. And in Vermont, actually, there's a group of veterinarians and pediatricians who are working on this concept, because most of the new animal diseases, or most of the new human diseases that come up nowadays, are really, they come from animals, and probably works the other way to an extent.
Oh, we're all animals.
Yeah, right. And you know, so even if you're not too closely related genetically, these diseases can pass back and forth. So the One Health concept is the idea that you don't have animal health and people health, you have One Health. Universal One Health. And so the One Health concept, the One Health is the term that's sort of being used to describe this relationship. And it's becoming a worldwide thing. And in fact, later on we'll mention CTPH's website. And if you go on there, which I hope you will, you'll notice there was a program produced for Frontline and that's a PBS program out of WGBH in Boston on this organization, CTPH. And there are some clips in there about people from CDC and other places talking about this One Health concept, and it'll help you to understand it. So
I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
yeah, it's really an interesting thing, and it really just broadens you out.